Okay, so we can go back to Claude and get started on the next step. We might have to be a little bit more explicit here. Text-to-speech is still a little bit more recent. As of right now, I don't think Pydantic AI actually supports this, so we'll have to go straight through the Google Gemini API, which isn't a big deal at all. In fact, when you click on Get Code here, it gives you sample code for different languages. So we can use Python in the dropdown, and then we'll see the example code to use. It even put the text in here. That's interesting. And then some sample code below. What I could do, so one option is I could copy and paste this sample code and just give that to Claude, and then it would figure out how to do this. Alternatively, I can click on the API docs. So let's see where that gets us. Yeah, there we go. I think this should do the trick. But this is just a general API doc, so we'll have to search for, here's text-to-speech on the left. And then we have multi-speaker TTS. So there's some Python example code. So I'm just gonna copy this link. Okay. And then I'll give this to Claude and see if it can make sense of that. And then again, we'll have to give it the voices as well. Before we do that, since the script step is working fine, let's go ahead and commit that. Okay. Okay, so here's my prompt. Please implement the podcast audio step. Since Pydantic AI doesn't support TTS yet, we'll need to use the Gemini API directly. You can find the relevant API docs here, and then I just pasted that docs URL. If you're implementing something from scratch and you don't actually know the API docs, it doesn't hurt to just let Claude figure it out itself. Worst case, it'll go in circles for a while, but usually it's pretty good with doing web searches and so on until it finds a solution that works. Okay, make sure to pass in a preamble that sets the stage for the podcast, including the two speaker profiles. Emphasize that Ryan is fast-talking and that Priya speaks with a British accent. Since we had to do that in the test just now, just making sure. The end result should be an MP3 file in the output directory. Feel free to either use a Python library or the FFmpeg system tool for any necessary audio conversion. So in my production pipeline, I just use FFmpeg, which can do all kinds of conversions, because the result that we get back from the API is actually essentially raw WAV format. There are some Python libraries that can do this, but FFmpeg was the easiest. But I'm going to just leave it up to Claude, see what it prefers. And then I specify the two voices. So for Ryan, Sajag Bia and Priya Gaycrux. So let's go ahead. I'm going to skip plan mode again, because I think what we want is pretty clear. We can just iterate if needed. And there it's asking whether it's okay to fetch this URL. I'll allow all of these. That was fairly quick, actually. So it says all tests are passing. It implemented podcast audio step, loads the podcast from the DB, sends audio preamble plus script to the Gemini TTS API using the Google.GenAI SDK directly. Okay. Multi-speaker voice config. Okay. And then has a PCM to MP3 function. Okay, yeah, so the output was PCM, not WAV. So it uses FFmpeg to turn that into MP3. Okay, perfect. So let's take a quick look. It only had to touch, oh, never mind. Yeah, so it touched these files. Let's see what it updated in Claude. So it documented the new step. Okay, great. That's just a new step in the CLI. And then here we have the audio implementation. So first the preamble. Okay, it's specifying some stuff like bitrate, channels. Okay, this is an episode of Idea Pipeline, a daily startup ideas podcast. Two hosts in natural conversation. Ryan speaks with an energetic American accent. He's fast talking and enthusiastic, building momentum as he speaks. Priya speaks with a crisp British accent. She's measured and deliberate with a dry wit and well-timed pauses. That's perfect. You could always expand a bit more on this, depending on the results we get. And then down here, we have the actual podcast audio step. Let's open this file here. Okay, that's better. This should look a little bit different, but hopefully not too different from the other steps. So it's reading our API key. Hopefully this works. Sometimes I found that this is the area where you need to iterate a little bit, making sure that all the API calls use the right parameters and such. That looks correct though at first glance. So we have our speaker configs. We pass the voice here for each speaker. Here's how it converts everything through FFmpeg to an MP3 file. Actually, I didn't see... Oh, here's where it generates the script. So the prompt is the audio preamble that we looked at, and then we're appending the actual script that we generated in the previous step. So this looks like it should work. So we'll just give it a shot.